Hey guys, and welcome back to Scotty's Garage. On this episode, we're going to talk about Dad's Ute. What it is, where it came from, what we've done with it, and more importantly, what we're going to do with it in the future. Hey guys, this is Dad's Ute. It's a 1968 Valiant Ute, alright, so Australian made thing. So these weren't made anywhere else except Australia. Right? They did do some exports, I think, to overseas, very limited, but yeah, it's an Australian only thing. And for those viewing from overseas, like America, North or South America, to you, it probably looks like a Dodge Dart. And you'd be right. I mean, it is an A-body Mopar, so very similar to a Dodge Dart that you'll find in the States. So yeah, it's a pretty cool beast, you know, a lot of fun. And my dad owned this for a few years before he passed away. Unfortunately, cancer got him, so yeah, that kind of sucks. Right, so under the bonnet we have a 318 Chrysler motor, alright? So the classic old 318, the 5.2 litre. They certainly saw a lot of them here in Australia. We didn't have a lot of engine options in Australia. We didn't get the full range of V8s, so the 5.2 litre was the most commonly V8 engine you saw in Australian Chryslers. And that's what this is, okay? So over the years that Dad owned this ute, he always talked about putting a V8 in it. It was a factory slant 6, 160 horsepower, 2-barrel slant 6, and a 3-speed manual, you know, the good old 3 on the tree. But Dad always talked about putting a V8 in it. He was never really what I'd consider a valiant guy as such, but after seeing what I'd done with the cars over so many years, like when I first started buying Valiants, he's like, "What are you playing with these old shit boxes, Scott? What are you doing, wasting your money on these things?" But then he's seen where it's led to, you know, Street Machine magazine, well, Street Commodores first, and Street Machine, and all that sort of stuff. And Dad became a bit of a convert, I gotta say. He bought a couple of Valiants over the years, and he mucked around, always cheap shit boxes, but
getting up in here it would be.
having fun.
Hey, about time I had a drive of it, had it for 6 years.
This was the best one he ever bought, right? So he found it in Hervey Bay in Queensland, bought it off the original owners, and it was a very clean unit for especially on the coast in Queensland. And then, you know, he's driven it around, proud as punch for many years with the slant 6 in it, the 3 on the tree, all that sort of stuff. But he always thought, yeah, this would be cool if it had a V8 in it. And he talked about all sorts of V8s with me over the years, even 392 Hemis, would you believe? He said, like, how hard would it be to put a 392? And I'm like, Dad, that's a bit of work, and the engines are super expensive. I mean, yeah, there's not going to be change from, 20 or 30 grand to do that, so yeah, probably not. But, he loved that car, and unfortunately he got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and within 7 months he was gone. And this was right on his retirement. He just kind of retired, and it really did suck. But before he went, he said, "Scott, I want you to have the car, I want you to look after it." And his dream was that Alex would have the car, and we all know that's not going to happen. Unfortunately, Alex is never going to be able to drive the car. he can't actually sit in this car, that we have no way of retaining him in the car properly, because he is, with cerebral palsy, they have such poor muscle control that he can't keep himself rigid and upright enough to be able to, ride around in this car, and that really does suck. So, but, that's just life. So you make lemonade out of lemons and all that sort of stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is I've decided to, look after the car in Dad's memory, and Alex gets to see it and hear it run and that sort of thing. He always gets a big smile on his face. But I decided to do a V8 conversion on it. And that really happened during COVID. So carnage, we were kind of limited during, the COVID years, and we didn't have access to a lot of parts because so many businesses were really, closed down. So we thought, well, why don't we drag Dad's ute out of the shed, and do that V8 conversion we always talked about. But this wasn't the first time I did a V8 conversion. So for those who have watched Scotty's Garage for years would have seen that I once put a big block in this thing. So after it came into my possession, I drove it around for a bit, and then I made plans to put a 361 truck motor in it. So a big block, small big block it was. And reasons for that were, I picked up a basically reconditioned 361 for cheap, $500, but it was a truck engine, and I didn't realize that was a problem at the time. So I got that engine and I started collecting parts like a big block 727, all that sort of stuff to go with it, and slowly piled up my parts until one day I embarked on the conversion. And I got the engine in there and running, but geez, it was a mission, because the truck crank hangs out the back of the block so much further than a car crank, and it wouldn't work with a 727, so I had to go found a second 361, but that was actually a car engine, and I swapped the crank over, which ended up developing other issues. But I got the thing running in the car and driving around, but God, it was not actually fun to drive. The brakes didn't work very well, because we had this big lump of iron in the front, and it was all drum brake at that time. It was such a low compression engine, it didn't really make any decent power. It looked amazing in there in the engine bay, but didn't really make a lot of power, and it was a nightmare to change the plugs. It just, oh God, changing the plugs was a full day exercise. It was just terrible. Was not a fun experience at all. So I ended up pulling that engine. The other issue was that putting that car crank into the truck motor without balancing it to suit the truck pistons and rods meant the thing vibrated quite severely. It was like you could drive it around, but it would rattle the change in the old ashtray and stuff like that. So you constantly just had this shudder to it, which was not pleasant. It just really wasn't. So I ended up pulling the big block out of it, and that engine is still in the shed there. And I've had the crank rebalanced for the rods and pistons. So Johnny Pillar at Powerhouse has balanced that up for me. So I am going to put that engine back together, and that engine might end up in the lockdown wagon. We'll talk about that later, but that's what might happen there. So I've built up this tough 318. In this whole exercise, we've built during the years we've built a Dodge Dart up as a giveaway car, and I think I talked about in the first episode. But we built it up with the help of Edelbrock. They'd supplied a whole bunch of parts, and they were so happy with how the whole thing came out, because we made 530 horsepower at the crank, 530 foot-pounds of torque. The thing was a monster. It was a torque monster. It was so much fun, that engine. It was a 408 stroke. It did really well. And I said to Edelbrock at the time, it's like, well, I'm building up another, small block Chrysler, 318 this time. I was wondering, do you reckon you can throw me some heads and stuff? And so they throw me a whole top end package, right? So heads, cam, carby, water pump, dizzy. They gave me everything, and it was fantastic. But I didn't do it straight away. It took a while to get everything else pieced together, and I ended up getting it together, and we did it on Carnage, and we got it running, and it does all right. It's it's got 10.5 to 1 compression. It runs on pump gas, and the thing makes decent horsepower. I mean, we've seen 260, 270 real world horsepower out of this thing so far, and that's not bad over a little 318. I think we can do better, but that's what we're going to do here on Scotty's Garage. So over the years I've taken it on a few cruises, like we've cruised up to Willowbank to Mopar Sunday, raced it up there, we've taken it out to Heathcote, raced it there, and we've run 13.2 at I think 105 mile an hour, and that's not bad considering the auto is really slipping, like slipping badly. It flares on the shifts, and that's our first problem we have to sort with this thing, because I think this is a 12-second car if we can get that auto sorted properly. If the auto's sorted, this thing is going to run 12s, and I think Dad would love that. He would think that would be amazing. You know, he used to love my old Valiants when they were running 13s and 14s. He thought they were just the fastest things in the world. So his old farm ute running 12s on the quarter and still looking the way it does, I think he would just think that would be hilarious. He would love that, and that would be what I'd like to do. So that's the first mission. First mission is get it running right. So needs the auto done, so we're going to do that. So I'm going to have to pull the auto out at some stage. That's going to be a real pain in the ass here. I may take it to the carnage workshop if I can and do it there, like pull the auto out at least, but I need a spare hoist and we have no spare hoist at the moment, so we'll work on that. We'll see how we go. The other issue is, if you've seen the episode where I drove up to Mopar Sunday with Gus just a few months back, we had a float leak on the carby. The float, you know, basically made it flood all the time. We managed to grab a carby off Rod Taylor up there at Albury, and we've put that on, and it's still on there, and it's an 800 CFM carb. The carby that we had on there was a 650 CFM carb, and to be honest, it runs really good with this 800 on it. It feels really good. So I'm curious to see what it would run, what it make in horsepower, and what it would run down the quarter with this 800 on it. But I have to tune it. Like this carby is still, it's running quite rich down low, and so it's not super happy at the moment. Like, it drives fine out on the highway, but you know, it gets a little bit like fuely around town. So I've got to tune the carby, set that up, and I think we can run some decent numbers. So auto, carby, that'll fix it mechanically, and then once all that's done, I'd like to start looking at the bodywork. I mean, it has a few, you know, pimples on it in terms of, like, it's got a couple little dings and scratches and stuff, and I'd love to fix that stuff up. Ultimately, I would like to give the car basically a closed door respray, you know, so fix it up, make it all clean and nice again, but don't change the essence of the car. You know, I still want it to be white, I still want it to be, you know, a fairly plain looking ute, but nice and clean, and then with the hubcaps and all that sort of stuff. So I think that is what we need to do. So I guess that's the plan. Do you agree? Is this what you think? I mean, it's my ute, and you're going to say it's your ute, Scott. You do what you want, and we're just here for the ride. And I know most of you will agree with that. And but yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. You know, I'm not going to turbo it, I'm not going to supercharge it, I'm not going to do any of those stupid things to it. They're not stupid, they're fun, but this is not that car. This is a cool cruiser that I can occasionally take to the drags, but most of the time it's going to be going to, you know, distance cruising to car shows, goes into Cars and Coffee and all that sort of stuff, and just hanging out and just celebrating the memory of my father with this car. Every time I drive this car, I think of Dad, you know, so it's a cool beast. I also want to fix up the wiring. That's another mission. I forgot to mention that. When we took it to Willowbank that time, I melted the wiring harness, so I have to still repair that. At the moment, it's still very jury-rigged, and it works, but yeah, I need to rebuild the wiring harness. But I'm going to do that. I think what we'll do is we'll do auto, carby, race it, see how that goes, and then I'll pop the screens out, make sure there's no rust. I don't think there is. Pull the dash out, because the screen has to come out for the dash to come out. I'll pull the dash out and I will repaint the dash, do all that stuff, but also rewire the entire dash, make a whole new loom, and we'll do all that and get the interior looking all smick, and then we'll look at the exterior. I think that is the way we need to step it through. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a lot of talking, and yeah, but I think it is a cool car, and it's a very cool project, and I think you guys should enjoy it. I hope you will, and you're going to see it all on future episodes. Oh, Scotty's Garage. Oh my god, I finally did it. I really need to come up with a new catchphrase. This for a few years before he passed away. Unfortunately, cancer got him, so yeah, that kind of sucks. Fuck off, Bert.